there's a 70-year period of development from the prophesied year in the Bible and the Quran and other religious traditions from 1844 until 1914, when World War I broke out. And 14 years after that, in 1928, 15 nations of the world got together and signed the Kellogg-Briand Paris Peace-pact on August 27th of 1928 in Paris on that day. And I believe some of the original signatories were Iran, certainly Russia, the United States, England, France, Germany. I think the Kingdom of Hijaz was mentioned, and China was a signatory. So this was a miracle and a marvel that took place at this time. And what makes it different from any other type of peace treaty or agreement that has happened in the past is it's a universal declaration of a non-aggression pact between all the nation state signatories who are signatories directly on the legal foundation of the Kellogg-Briand Paris Peace-pact. And what it represents, because it's so simple, is Article 1 simply says the nation states renounce recourse to war. And Article 2 states that they will use pacific means to settle differences of whatsoever origin or context. And Article 3 simply says that when they ratify this agreement from inside their nation state, that it has to be according to the constitutions of their nation state. And therefore, Article 3 guarantees total and complete autonomy to all the member nation states who have retained total sovereignty inside of their own borders and jurisdictions and territories and cultures and so forth. So this is absolutely unique in the history of ideas or the intellectual history of humanity, that even though non-aggression pacts have been signed in the past and upheld in the past, they were never universally stated in like their universal general nature. So the Kellogg-Briand Paris Peace Pact in Article 2, which is not, which is where the developmental struggles taking place now to activate that more fully, to uphold universal declaration of human rights for all people on the planet, is also what's guaranteed in Article 3. So there's autonomy to everybody as an equal human being. Whereas the other treaties would be between Germany and France. So this was like a treaty between two nation states that was very specific to the relationship just between them. Or it would be between like one ethnic group and another ethnic group. So we might see a treaty like at Oslo between Egypt or Israel, or Jews and Muslims and something like this. Now, in history, we have seen glimpses of what the power of a simple non-aggression pact can do to liberate and guarantee the total autonomy of all members, including the individual person, the sovereignty and power being autonomous of the village or town or local community we live in, that has the right to police itself and protect its own members, so it doesn't need to be occupied by a state force in the nation. For instance, I live in Colorado in a city, and we do not have a federal armed force in our town from Washington, D.C., and we certainly don't have a state force, of armed people, ready to outnumber the citizens of Fort Collins either. We have a local police department that's elected and formed by the citizens here that polices itself. So we're independent and sovereign here in the United States in this type of a way. And also in the United States, it doesn't matter what religion or ethnic background or skin color you have, as far as legal paperwork goes, we're guaranteed these rights and freedoms by constitutional law in the United States. So we can't legislate morality, but these constitutional laws and universal declaration of unalienable human rights and things like this, and rights for civil liberties and equal civil freedoms and the right for diversity and religious expression, you know, are all guaranteed on paper by these documents, which the documents are not the reality. The documents are the documentary evidence of the organic reality of what it means to be a human being, and the documentary evidence of the promises we made to each other to respect each other as equal human beings. Now, the reason we have this value of being respected as equal human beings is because people in the past have explained to us and lived their lives in such a way as to highlight that this is what's most important. And these human beings that I'm talking about are like the Buddha, Muhammad, Jesus, Moses, the Bab and Bahaullah, Buddha, Krishna, and Zoroaster, White Buffalo Calf Woman, and even people who are alive in the world today that are helping their communities and praying for world peace and for the protection of the oneness of humanity and equality for all people. So what's unique about the Kellogg-Briand Paris Peace-pact is that makes it different than any other document of its kind is it's in force now. If you're a conspiracy theorist, or you're a religious mystic, or you're wondering what's going on, or you're wondering if there's messages from the Arcturians and Pleiadians, or you're concerned about conspiracy theory, or you think that they're injecting stuff in the vaccine, whereas if they wanted to put stuff in your body, they can do it in your food. And you have all of these concerns about what's going on and what the power struggles are between different groups of people and what all the interests are, and if there's a queue out there or something like that. All the things that are happening in the world today are revolving around the fact that the Kellogg-Briand Paris Peace-pact is the axis of all international relations, and it's a documentary evidence of not only the promise that we wouldn't harm one another, but the reality that in all of the religious teachings of the world, the God that sent those teachers, such as the ones I named earlier, is the God of love and peace and truth and justice and reality and love and kindness and compassion. And the absence of the presence of that source of those qualities and attributes is war. War is a godless phenomenon. There was a discussion earlier about war equaling atheism or atheism equaling war. In other words, who are the gods of war? Greed, the love of money, prejudice, racism, nationalism, whatever these divisive things are. This isn't what a person sees in nature and the harmony of the sun and the moon and the stars and the beauty of the seasons and when the springtime comes and the beautiful fragrances, and it's a wonderful to be alive type of a feeling. War, which is the absence of what we would say is the divine, meaning when we're happy and satisfied and don't have to see like bloody murder everywhere, you know, and dead children's bodies shot up like in Texas and Palestine and the Levant and other places like this, or we're dedicated truly in our hearts to defend the Mazlum, and the Mazlum are women who were murdered because a blade of hair showed through a scarf in our own town or country. So as individual human beings, you know, we have to be able to stop this type of feeling and behavior within our own selves first. So what's unique about the Kellogg-Briand Pact is it's in force now, and it's documentary evidence of the promise that we promised we would keep together now. And we were able to clearly describe this in more detail for people who are interested in a video that's on YouTube called The Covenant of Love. And it's being translated or transcribed into book form, and other authors are adding chapters to that. We hope to get that published as soon as possible. Part of the problem that's happening with me right now is I'm working alone at my office because I'm under federal investigation due to the court case in the 10th Circuit in Denver, Colorado. And I haven't had my books or electronic materials and computers returned yet, so I haven't had access to a lot of the sources I would need to like get my writing and publishing back on track. Nevertheless, 40 days from the equinox of 2023, where we give the Covenant of Love talk as video, which people watching this should definitely see that, later was this weekend. And that's one of the reasons we wanted to talk about these things today. That God has given us a gift. In that other talk, we talked about how Jesus's new love commandment to love one another as I have loved you will activate Article 2 of the Kellogg-Briand Paris Peace-pact. Okay, well, the Kellogg-Briand Paris Peace-pact doesn't state what the Pacific means should look like. And God has given us a model of something that's worked in the past and is working right now. And if people knew about this model and how they can use it to activate Article 2 of in all three articles of the Kellogg-Briand Pact, they would become very happy about this. Okay. Now, we're particularly very happy about this because this discovery that happened on November 4th, the anniversary of the martyrdom of Showqui Effendi, is a miracle. And it has resolved all of the Baha'i differences in Baha'i administration globally. And again, if we didn't have all of our computers seized and stuff, we would have a team of people here that would be preparing the handbook of Baha'i administration and all of these things concerning how the Kitabiyat, the Will and Testament, the documents of the Most Great Covenant, which is the Kellogg-Briand Paris Peace-pact, stated explicitly by Abdulbaha in the book, The Secret of Divine Civilization, the Madiniyat, would be set forth. And this would also include this model that resolves the tensions globally in Baha'i administration. And what this model is pretty powerful. And it's for mature people because it's absolutely, completely revolutionary. And it's the type of revolution that needs to take place, you know, through effort, or the Arabic and maybe Persian word for effort, you know, is jihad. And this is the greater effort of self-growth into maturity to understand what this model really is, and the lesser effort of actually turning our external societies through effort into garden paradise and something civil, you know, according to this model that would satisfy the needs of all the diverse people. And this is the model of Medina. That we didn't know about this. That in the Medina Constitution, which Thomas Jefferson was well acquainted with, that the freedoms in the United States of America that everybody in the world would wish they had in their country that we have here are modeled on the Medina Constitution of the Prophet Muhammad. You know, assalamu alaikum. So this is a miracle. And in this document, and there's different versions of it, it's an inspiration. It states there that the Jews and the Muslims and the polytheists and the Christians, and it doesn't matter who, that's a signatory to that document, agrees to combine their effort together as one effort in support of the document itself, is what it states. So somebody gets in there, like that's happened between now and 1844 in those first 70 years from 1844 to 1914, and they impose like a foreign concept that blocks the people from being free from the clutter in their minds so that they can independently investigate the truth of the Kellogg-Briand Paris Peace-Pact's origins back to Jane Addams, Abdulbaha in The Secret of Divine Civilization, and the Bahai statement itself, which is the most great covenant that conflict and strife are forbidden, a rigid prohibition in the book. And that means, as international policy is legislated as the Kellogg-Briand Paris Peace Pact that's delineated in the Madiniyat of Abdulbaha, The Secret of Divine Civilization, that means as personal practice. We renounce conflict and strife in our own personal practice, both in how we treat the people around us and in how we treat ourselves in our relationship with reality or the divine, the way we understand that for ourselves. This Constitution of Medina is the solution or the inspirational model for the solution in Palestine and Israel. And God gave this model. It's not for me. I didn't legislate the outlawry of war. That happened before me. So I'm just a person who lives on the planet like everybody else. Now, I don't understand what's going on in Iran. I don't live there. I imagine there's diverse people there. And I've heard of these other problems that we've discussed in private. And sometimes we were interviewed about these. And I'm hoping that the Medina Constitution model might also be a great inspiration for the people of Persia that may help them resolve some of these civil rights and civil liberties issues and freedom of religion issues that are taking place there. And again, it's as established and given forth in the noble example of Muhammad himself. So this has worked in the region before, and what it comes along with, which is why it works, is it comes along with the provisions of guaranteeing complete autonomy of all the members. And like in the Kellogg-Briand Paris Peace Pact that does this, it guarantees the right to self-defense of all the sovereign members. And it doesn't obligate them at any time to engage in any activities that any sovereign or autonomous entity would say yes or no to. It allows that to be maintained. And the reason this works is because if each one of us wants our own autonomy, the only way that's going to be achieved is by granting that same amount of autonomy to each one of us. So the only limit to our own autonomy and freedom is only upon the point that it infringes in some way upon the freedom of another person. So we all should have the right to live in a dry place and sleep at night and be able to eat food that's right next to us that we're growing, so we feel safe and secure in that type of a way. And then if all the power goes out, who cares for 3 months? We'll just live through the winter the way we would with any other way. And if it doesn't, then we still have electricity and computers and can go to work and use money because it makes things go faster in an economy. But that's all like extra. We shouldn't have to pay money to live on our own indigenous planet. This is like, I don't know how we did this to ourselves. That the animals don't. I mean, as far as having to sleep somewhere and eat food and have a family, you don't need electricity or money. You just need food and water and a space to do this, that's undisturbed through violence or something like this. And beyond that, if people want to engage in other activities, we can have, an economy and technology. But what happened is we all got conscripted into a total war economy. And this happened starting around 1844. And the Crimean War, which was in the Ukraine at that time, was the first war ever filmed and photographed. And people were horrified when they saw this. And then this 70 years from 1844 goes right to 1914, and we have World War I. And the Ottoman Empire collapses. And the last war or battle of World War I fought by the Brits was in the town of Megiddo in Israel, which is the prophesied thing in the book of Revelation for Armageddon, the Battle of Megiddo. And then 14 years later, it was the war to end all wars. War was actually made illegal. Now, when Hitler and Henry Ford and those people rose up, they wanted to go back to the previous law of the Treaty of Westphalia, which gave dictators the right to hijack countries and make wars. So the Russians and the United States and the Iranians and the Allies and 30,000 Iranians gave their life so war would be outlawed at the beginning of this cycle in 1844 to 1914, rose up together, opposed Hitler. The legal point of World War II was the Axis was against the new 1928 law, and the Allies, who were legally called the United Nations, were for it. And the Allies won, and we went into a wonderful golden age of prosperity inside the different nations for the people that were part of this, even though we had like a Cold War happening at that time. Then when Sputnik was launched in 1957, Showqi Effendi was murdered in London, and the system was hijacked from the inside. So from 1957 to 2027, we're in another 70-year repeat of like 1844 to 1914. And here we're seeing the fulfillment of the prophecy in Ezekiel 1 of the storm cloud coming out of the north of Gog and Magog, Juj and Majuj of Russia, down into Israel, the Palestinian Gaza problem. And Ezekiel also prophesies when he has that vision in chapter 1, the coming of the everlasting covenant of peace in Ezekiel 37, where Ukraine's the valley of Hamon-Gog, and Gaza sees this fire come down in chapter 1. This happened on the 5th of Tammuz, in the year 593 BC, when Daniel explained Nebuchadnezzar's dream to him. And there's a prophesied 7 times in the old Hebrew scriptures of Daniel, and a time is 360, 7 times 360 is 2520, so that's 2,520 years from the 5th of Tammuz on that calendar in 593 BC. The sun moved around the earth moved around the sun 2,520 times from the moment of Ezekiel's vision, seeing the Ukraine war fall upon the south and Gaza and erupt in this way at a world crisis for world war and world justice and world peace. And you add 20 years to that, rotations of the earth around the sun, and you get August 28th, 1928, when war was made illegal, which is what he declares in what's now chapter 37. This is the New Jerusalem, the new city of peace. It's called in the book of Revelations the maiden, the maid of heaven, which in Arabic and Persian is the Madiniyat, Medina, the Medina Constitution. Medina means the city or the civilization. So this is guidance from God, from Jesus and Muhammad and the Bab and Bahaullah and Abdulbaha and Showqi Effendi and the Knight of Bahaullah, Dr. Leland Jensen, who didn't break the covenant. So we were able to recognize that the founders of the Baha'i faith colluded with people who were under the provisions of the covenant in those days, like Jane Addams and FDR and other friends of Mason Remy in Paris and Chicago and Washington, that allowed Abdul-Baha's son, his Ogson son, to help the different ones as he traveled around the world for quote unquote firmness in the covenant, get together to have war made illegal in 1928. And it went into force on July 24th of 1929. And we didn't find out about it, except we're being sued in the 10th Circuit Federal Court in Denver, and they've taken all of our stuff. Now, I'm not mad. It's not my stuff. It's his stuff. It's Baha'u'llah's things that we have all this stuff. So they took it away, and we don't need it because it's in our hearts. But the point is this: because we were educated when we discovered the League of Nations Covenant number 2137, and were educated enough to recognize it was the foundation of international law. We didn't come across this through politics. We came across this through prophecy. And this is because it's for the love of God. Muhammad never, in the Constitution of Medina, it says in the Quran that this constitution is based on, there's no compulsion in religion. In that constitution, nobody has to surrender their will to anything else other than the Constitution. They don't, it's in there, it doesn't say they have to become Muslims. It just says they have to surrender to the Constitution. It gives them all equal rights. Well, guess what? If you surrender to a constitution like the United States Constitution that I've surrendered to, that gives us all equal rights, well, now you're a Muslim. Don't tell anybody, you know? This is ridiculous. This is the most absurd thing I've ever seen in my life, that all of the so-called founders of the world's organized religions really came to set up a secular society. Now that makes more sense because it would explain why God didn't send the same religion through each prophet to each people, you know, or make them change their language or their ethnic group or their culture. Apparently the creator, the actual creator of the universe and everything, and it loves diversity. Apparently it's human beings that want to stamp that out. So I think we covered all 3 points.
Thank you, dear Neal. Just one more question regarding the same thing. It means that we do not have any direct hint to the Peace-pact in the Baha'i scripture. Is it correct? It means that it was inspired by the Baha'i leaders, but not directly actually commanded by them or directly.
Abdulbaha sat down with Jane Addams and mapped the whole thing out. Do your research. So this is also directly explained word by word by word in The Secret of Divine Civilization that the legislation was based on. The reason it's Article 1, Article 2, and Article 3 is because it represents Abdulbaha's design of the ringstone symbol, where Article 1 is Olami Haq, Article 2 is Olami Amer, and Article 3 is Olami Kalk. And it fits into the 3-stage election of the local, national, and universal houses of justice. Now, what we're doing with the Medina Constitution, which is our own business that will be published soon, is all the national spiritual assemblies will become liberated and completely autonomous according to the model of Medina. And this is what the Sands Guardian Group will never have. They have a dictatorship by consensus and Nepentine type problem up there in Haifa right now. And they have excommunicated all the great scholars of the Baha'i world, and they're creating a homogenized pablum type of a Rui thing. But what this cause of God is about is not that type of a thing. What the cause of God is about universal peace for the oneness of humanity. And what's going to give that to all the people of the world is some sort of a model based upon that's satisfactory to the signatory members that are already legally bound under the Kellogg-Briand Pact, of some sort of Medina constitution for people. And no one country is going to dominate the other, and we will retain cultural diversity, and wars will cease at the international level. And that's what will take place. There'll be a giant Silk Road rejuvenated, connecting Europe through Russia and the Ukraine and China and northern India all the way to the east. And the prophecy of Abdulbaha that China is the country of the future will come true. And when all the world realizes that what saved us from total annihilation, because at the most only 1/3 of mankind will be killed in 1 hour of thermonuclear war, with every American city being of 100,000 or more population being targeted by Russian Sardar's missiles, you know. So at the worst case scenario, after all this, people will recognize that this outlawing of war originates out of the nation of Iran and from the Bab and Bahaullah. One of the Bab's strongest laws in the Bayani Farsi is the fines for hurting other people's feelings. Okay. Now, if we were that sophisticated to get to the point where the worst crime committed in the country that month was somebody almost got fined for hurting somebody's feelings, and we all watched the trial and forgave them both. Yeah, that would be good to watch on the national news instead of this other stuff where the women are dying. So anyway, you know, this experience that we're going through in the Middle East and in the division between the East and the West is because the hijacking from this thing within has been routed out already within the last 7 years, and the people involved in that level are still routing it out. Now, we came across these things through prophecy. We are restricted in Abdulbaha's tablet of governance to giving spiritual guidance. We have no concern about any material benefits or material outcomes amongst the people, as long as the people find a satisfactory and amicable outcome and come up with some sort of pacific process, you know, to work out their differences. We don't want to see, you know, some violent, bloody revolution somewhere taking place just because people have read the Medina Constitution model. This is to be discussed and understood in great depth. For instance, in the Quran, there's punishments for theft. And in the Quran, there's commandments to pay zakat, which is 40th or 2.5%. It costs 2.5% of the gross global world product to run all these wars. So basically, all of humanity is spending what God designated as zakat to finance all the destructions. So that's something to think about. So that money is supposed to be used for world peace and the peace dividend and so forth and so on, not for wars and not for personal growth or some individual's personal aggrandizement. But the point is this: if the government locally is not providing through zakat food and shelter for all the people, then it has no right to enforce the punishments for theft, because people are going to have to steal to eat. So in a situation like that, where the provisions for protection are out the window and people have to fend for themselves, you can't enforce law. That everybody would have to re-agree, oh, okay, yeah, okay, we'll provide for everybody. You know, all of a sudden there's no crime. You know, then there is a burglary. They're like, oh my God, there's a burglary. What could possibly have happened? Now there's an investigation. It's going to be something that has nothing to do with personal survival or something like that. It might have been something else because circumstances alter cases. This is what removes crime. So you can't uphold the autonomy of the people who want world peace and want autonomy, see, and at the same time label other people as terrorists. Unless everybody's already a signatory of the Kellogg-Briand Paris Peace-pact, the same way in the Medina Constitution model, all the signatories agree to be nonviolent to each other. And the document gives provisions of what to do if somebody becomes a terrorist, by either attacking the group of signatories or the document's existence itself, because the document itself is a living document like the Guru Granth, and it provides life to the signatories because it's documentary evidence of the promise not going to harm each other. Once you realize your neighbor's not going to hurt you, you might invite him over for dinner. So, I mean, people are all wound up in this total war economy, and we have to pay to eat and sleep on the planet, and we can't get money to do that. So we're in a panicked fear state, and we're afraid we'll be attacked by foreigners, and it's all fear-based warmongering nonsense. And it's meant to be this way by the plan of God, because the destruction of civilization is the stripping of humanity away from ourselves and the destruction of our mind that recalls that we're all human beings and have equal human rights, and we're here to love one another and to live in a warm world and help. And the reason for suffering, natural suffering and disasters, is so we can comfort each other and be through this experience of this mystical, mysterious journey together that we're all going to have different points of view about. You know, as opposed to being here, you know, wrangling and struggling. So there's really, as long as nobody knows about the Kellogg-Briand Paris Peace-pact, then who's the terrorist? The terrorist is the person who is creating conflict and strife to deprive the people of the world and the nations of the world from recognizing what the Kellogg-Briand Paris Peace-pact is and why our relatives, including my family, sacrificed and gave their lives in World War II to uphold that pact. And in order to uphold the pact where war is renounced, we ourselves have renounced war in Article 1. So how are we supposed to defend ourselves with self-defense in Article 3? Using force as the servant of justice. According to the Holy Quran in Surah number 9, the only surah not revealed in the name of God, says we're immune if we have to use force as the servant of justice. Now, in my life, I practice that as a spiritual martial art in the science of sociability. So you're never going to get anything out of me more than words and talking. So that's all that's going to happen around me. But for people that are in the army and in the police force or the fire department or first responders, they're in a different realm than what I'm in. And this Surah number 9 gives them immunity from what they have to do, like when the Treaty of the Constitution of Medina is broken or the Treaty of Bahai is broken, and what to do with the violators when the Kellogg-Briand Paris Peace-pact is broken. Now, the execution of the Nuremberg 10 and the Tokyo 7 and the Kariza 8 by Al-Tabari's numbers, 7 plus 1 woman, is something that Bahaullah has talked about in the Law Yada that greatly disturbed him.